From Boca Raton, Florida, this is Behind the Bima. On this episode, Rabbi Goldberg and Rabbi Broide sit down with Rabbi Doron Perez, a dedicated father, compassionate leader, and a unifying force for the Jewish community. Known for his steadfast role as executive chairman of the Mizrachi World Movement, Rabbi Doron opens his heart about the unimaginable pain of losing his beloved son and the deep resilience that has carried him forward. In this intimate conversation, Rabbi Doron shares how he has navigated the painful duality of grief and hope, balancing personal loss with his public mission of bridge building and unity. He reveals how his journey has inspired him to reach across divides, foster connection and healing within a community often challenged by discord. Join us as we delve into Rabbi Perez's reflections on loss, leadership, and the power of togetherness, and learn how one man's strength is lighting the way for a more united future. All this and more, Behind the Bima.
We're joined by Rabbi Doron Perez, a longtime friend, Rabbi Broide and myself, and someone who before October 7th was a real leader of our people, executive chairman of Mizrahi World Movement, and somebody taking real achrayus, real responsibility for the Jewish people. And of course, Rabbi Doron, since October 7th, cast in a position you'd never want to sign up for, that nobody would ever want, but really in the spotlight, in the limelight, for the tragic loss of a son, another son injured who got married. And we long wait, Klal Yisrael waits, day 500. We wait for you to be able to have closure, and we mourn and grieve together with you. And since then, you know, Rav Doron, I know my wife on a mission she was on in Israel, Rabbi Broide, so many have interacted with you, and we should be comforting you, and yet you are a source of enormous comfort and strength for us and for the Jewish people, for which we are so indebted, that somehow you have this resiliency and this strength, you and your wife and your family, to serve this, as I say, this role nobody would ever want. So it's an honor to be with you and the opportunity to go behind the Bima together.
Thank you so much, Rav Efrem. It's great to be with you, and to Rav Josh, and for the incredible work that you do, and not only building the Boca community, but far beyond. The voice from Behind the Bima echoes far beyond your geographic community, and far beyond. So it's an honor and privilege to be with you in this on Behind the Bima. Thank you.
Thank you. So, there's been a lot of interviews with you, and both on podcasts and in print, and the story, which maybe we'll get into to the degree you're comfortable. But I want to sort of fast forward to where we are now, day 500 and into the 500s. Please God, this will be the final day. There should be no more days. What is the experience of the most recent ceasefire and the return of welcoming home living hostages, and now the news that maybe as soon as a couple days from now, Israel is going to receive the bodies of victims of October 7th, and those families will have closure in that way. We follow it. All of the Jewish people feel incredibly connected. No one is dispensable. Every hostage, every neshama, the living and those who are no longer here, we all feel it so deeply in our heart, but nobody like you, like those who've experienced these losses. So how are you processing these news, and in real time as this is unfolding and happening?
Yeah. I think it's very, very bittersweet, or sweet bitter. Every single hostage which comes out is a tremendous simcha. Some of the families I know really well, and we've become like family. I didn't really know any of them before, but to see circumstances have brought us together, and to see the embraces of so many of the families, not only the hostages that we've all come to know, but their family members, who some of them we've come to know very, very closely and deeply. It's tremendous happiness. And then it's always followed by that deep sense of pain that we won't have that opportunity to embrace Daniel alive again. And at best we can hope and pray for is to be able to bring him to a full burial. As you correctly said, we're waiting, please God, to see, at least to get some of the bodies back now, as this first phase ends the, its final stages. And we haven't seen too many bodies come back in these sort of, in these exchanges. So I don't yet know what that'll feel like, but I think it'll give chizuk that, others have come back for burial. And please God, Daniel will come back soon. I must say that when Oron Shaul came back for burial after 10.5 years, I know that was an operation of Seirat Matkal, and the chief of staff shared with us the families of the soldiers, the information that they had and how they did it, and that Israel will spare no means to be able to send in its best and most well-trained to gather information. And for me, I think maybe the thing which has given our family the most chizuk is that if after 10.5 years Oron Shaul could come back now, then please God, our son and all the hostages, those alive and even those who've unfortunately deceased, will be able to come back for burial soon.
When it comes to that information, is there a back channel that the families that are involved or have had hostages, that you're in touch with people in the government and you find out information that we don't know, or are you finding it out as soon as we find it out?
Yeah. So what happens is, I can only talk on behalf of, my own circumstances as the parent of a soldier. Every single soldier family of a hostage has an officer of a scanner of a colonel in reserve duty who's directly responsible to be in touch with us. His name is Yossi Shemesh from Shoham. He's 16 months. He's part of our family, and we've become very, very close. I'm in touch with him every single day. He's in touch with all of our family members. So he is charged by the army to let us know before any information gets out that we shouldn't hear from the media. Sometimes if something gets out to the media, we phone him right away and he says it's not authorized, etc. He said you won't hear anything in the media unless you've heard it from him. So we won't. So he always tells us. Some of the more sensitive things we're not privy to before, because obviously, in today's day and age, anyone who's privy to any information, it can only hamper things. People make comments. So, for instance, the information about how Oron Shaul got out was shared with us by the Chief of Staff and one of the generals in a meeting with the families of soldiers after the fact, things that have not been publicized in the media. But certainly, they try to keep us abreast of everything going on. We hear about things before it gets out into the media, but anything really sensitive, sometimes we're told not to say anything until it gets out because, but as a general rule, they'll only share with us things that just before it comes out so that we'll know about it and we shouldn't be surprised by it. But I have to say the army has been incredibly sensitive and we've got an exceptional officer and he's, as I said, he's become part of the family.
So if you're comfortable answering this, and I don't mean to make it sort of clinical or halachic in asking it, but we don't have the opportunity to speak to somebody for whom it applies. So personally, how does the halacha respond to this in terms of having already mourned when you found out after way too long, 163 days, was it? Until you found out 163 long days of waiting and hoping. And there was some level of closure then, some mourning then. And please God, when Daniel will be returned and there'll be a proper burial, will there be further mourning? How does the halacha navigate or guide you through this?
Yeah, no, so that's obviously a very pertinent question, practical question for us, and we hope we'll have to be able to deal with that very soon. So we've got this unusual situation of these multiple days of the Yortzeit. So once we heard in day 163 that Daniel had been killed on October 7th, so essentially Simchat Torah for posterity will be the Yortzeit, the day of his falling, of his death. But in the first years, we know it's generally the day of burial. Now, what is Daniel's day of burial? So firstly, even the partial burial that we did on Chet Adar, on the 17th of March, or 18th of March was the burial, but we heard on the 17th. So even on Chet Adar Bet, we had a big dilemma whether to do a funeral bichlal, because even though, thank God, we did have Daniel's uniform and part of his uniform with blood on it and blood that they found in and around the tank which they collected. So I asked the rabbi of the army and later the chief rabbi of the army, I said, I assume we halachically have to bury what we found, but do we have to bury it in a kever for Daniel? Do we have to do a levaya? Because surely you need Rosho V'Rubo. We need the majority of the body in order to do a funeral. And he said, no, correct. You're actually not mechuyav to do a levaya. The chiyuv of the kfura is on the actual is on the body and the levaya. Here you don't have it, so there is a chiyuv of shiva. But if you want to, you can just it can be buried on the side somewhere, and you can wait for the body for burial. He said, I strongly urge you not to do that. He said it's very difficult not to have a makom kfura, to have a tzion kever. He said you never know how long you're going to last. He said I can tell you from experience is that if you've got an opportunity to have a kever, not just to bury the remains of the uniform and the blood somewhere, but to actually have a proper kever Yisrael, even though his body's not there, you should do it. We liaised with Rabbi Rimon and other Rabbonim, and the Rav Krim, the chief rabbi of the army, and they all strongly advised to do a funeral. So indeed, the Levaya, and hence the Yom Kvura, was on the Chet Adar, and indeed in a couple of weeks' time, we're having the Azkara for the memorial service for 1 year since the partial burial. So we've already had like 2 Azkarot this year. One's just after Simchat Torah for the day of Patira, another now for the day of partial burial. In what world do we live that we're hoping and praying that we'll have a third day? And indeed, if the body does come back, we'll have to do another Levaya.
Wow.
And to sit Shiva again. The truth is, Rav Efrem, I actually haven't looked it up. I think I need to sit for 1 day. I think there's Shiva for 1 day, I imagine, but I actually haven't actually. I'm looking forward to be able to ask that Shaila, but I think it's for 1 day. So it's a Levaya again and sitting for 1 day, and
It'll
then
be
the Shaila will be on. Say again.
Please God, when his body will be returned, it'll be in the same grave.
It'll be in the same grave, in the same Tzion Kever. And then we'll have another Shaila. What becomes the Yortzeit again? Do we have a third Yortzeit then for this year? Is that the day of Kvura, which is the actual day of Kvura? So we'll also have that Shaila. Do we Mitzayah in that in a year's time as well? So it really is this very unusual. But please God, it will be put in the same grave on Mount Herzl. I do want to say, it was so difficult knowing after 5 weeks when they did all the DNA testing that Daniel had been injured. The blood clearly showed that he'd been injured. It was so that the day that we heard that Daniel had been injured was such a difficult day for us because we knew it's hard enough to survive. We always knew early on that Daniel, unless a miracle happened, would be one of the last to return. He's a male soldier officer. By every parameter, Hamas will want to keep him till the end. But I always felt that he's a strong boy, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And Bezrat Hashem, if he's okay on the first day, Bezrat Hashem, he'll be okay. The knowledge that he had been injured and perhaps even badly injured was very, very difficult for us. But I want to say, in retrospect, we're blessed that we have this his uniform because we actually have a grave. The majority of the soldiers who have been declared dead do not have a grave. And I can tell you from the knowledge of some of these families, one of the families told me, Doron, when I phoned on Yom HaZikaron just to commiserate with them, they said they were in Cyprus. They said they felt that they had to leave Israel because everybody else has got a grave to go to.
Wow.
They don't have a grave to go to. And therefore they felt they just had nowhere to go. So I want to say that we're lucky, in inverted commas, that we actually have a grave, even though the body's not in it. I just spoke to my wife. I'm in LA at the moment, and I spoke to my wife. She visited the kever yesterday with her cousin, and she feels a lot of strength, and she feels with all the pain that there's somewhere to go, and we hope and pray that his body will be there for burial as well.
So I want to ask you, I know you're in LA now, you're doing wonderful work for Mizrachi. I think one of the things that I've admired from a distance over these last 500 days is how you can grieve and mourn and carry that sadness, which any parent would, and which undoubtedly you do, but also return with a focus to your mission, your purpose, and with an optimism and a hope and a positivity. Everyone, Rav Doron, who's interacted with you, as I mentioned, my wife was on a mission, and Rav Josh and others, they come back, and you are that source of strength for us. You have this positivity. How are you able to essentially bifurcate? How are you able to put up on a shelf that sadness, that grief, which otherwise would paralyze so many others, and carry that in your heart, and without the closure, because there's only been a partial burial? How are you able to simultaneously wait and long for the return of Daniel in full, and yet also have a smile? And before we started recording, how are you? It's good to see you. Good to see you. How are you able to do that? And do you have maybe some messages for people going through challenges in their life with the ability to simultaneously honor their challenge and honor their suffering and honor their pain, but also not be paralyzed by it and find that ability to be able to smile and be hopeful and optimistic and positive and stay on mission?
It's a great question. I firstly, if I'm honest with myself, I don't know how. What I mean is it's not something I would have known in advance. I'm sure like me, unfortunately, any community rabbi, and in the 15 years in South Africa, we had so many children in our community and school who passed away from different things and accidents and diseases and accompanied people at the most difficult time. And I often observed people and was so inspired by them and how they dealt with this. And, now and then I had the thought, which a thought that nobody wants to have is, wow, I don't know if I would have that ability or that strength, not that anybody ever wants to have that. And nothing really prepares you for it. And, when it happened, there was no way of knowing in what direction it would go. I think what happened with me, Rav Efrem, is something happened after 48 hours. I must say, after the first 48 hours with one son missing, Daniel, and Jonathan injured, I didn't know what was going on. I could barely breathe. I was in this Vayidom Aaron state of just absolute shock, and I just didn't know what was going on. And then I had a thought, and when this thought came to me, this is for me the beginning of something, of the ability to hold them both. Is what happened was I had this thought, it came to me and I just said, I'm actually lucky that Jonathan's alive. On another day, I could have lost 2 children. When it became clear to me what Jonathan had been through on that day and the incredible miracles of Hashem which saved him, I've said a number of times that if somebody would have told me what Daniel did and what Jonathan did and said one of them passed away, which one would you think is the most exposed? I would have thought not Daniel, because he was in a tank and he had certain protection and Jonathan had none of it. And I won't go through his whole battle, but it really was miracle after miracle. And all of a sudden, when this thought came to me, I said, you know what? I could even say the words, I'm lucky, regarding Jonathan. I was immediately self-conscious that, wow, I'm for the first time, I actually can feel not only pain, not only shock, but a little bit of light and appreciation. And I actually genuinely felt, and I want to say, I don't know what I would have done without this. What I mean is, if it was only what happened to Daniel, I haven't been in a situation like that. I've been in a situation where one son was, unfortunately taken hostage and killed and missing and then killed, and another one literally saved by miracle. And the moment I could hold on to that, Rav Efrem and Rav Josh, I actually felt a sense of appreciation. And then also, we did the wedding 10 days later, and that's a whole sugi in and of itself. But, I was so fearful that even though it felt like the right thing to do a small wedding for Jonathan and Galia, they're a frum couple, and it's how long we're going to wait. You start waiting, you never know how long you wait. Let's marry them off, and please God, Daniel will come back and we'll do a bigger celebration. And even though we had decided that rationally, I was genuinely fearful how I'd be able to hold genuine happiness and pain for Daniel. And I've often shared that I thought that the only way to get through it was not to think about Daniel. And I went to the chuppah not thinking about Daniel, to say, if I bring Daniel under the chuppah with me, I won't be able to genuinely be happy. And please God, Jonathan, your older son, gets married only once, and you want to be able to enjoy the simcha. And a part of me was not able to bring Daniel under the chuppah with me. And I said, I'm not going to think about him for 5 hours. The only way I'm going to be able to celebrate with Jonathan. And then an incredible thing happened. The rabbi who was marrying them, a colleague of mine, I believe you know him, Rav Hillel Merzbach from Yad Binyamin. I think there's been some twinning with the community or something like that. He's a dear friend. And Rav Hillel, who's a close friend and knows Jonathan well, started the wedding by saying, there's no way I can start this wedding without mentioning the one who's not here. And he literally burst out into tears. He started talking about Daniel. We all davened for Daniel. We all broke down. I broke down. My wife broke down. There weren't many dry eyes. And then an incredible thing happened, which I wouldn't have thought. We stopped, we wiped our tears, and somehow we were able to continue with the wedding, and it was happy. And then we had some family pictures an hour later, which was excruciating for a few minutes, and then we went to the dancing. It was incredible. And when I look back at the wedding, I feel incredible happiness for the wedding, amongst the happiest moments of my life, tinged with some of the most painful moments. And when I reflect back in this has actually been a paradigm for the whole year. Somehow the human heart is able to hold both. Wow. I don't know how. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't have excruciating pain. I was thinking talking to a rabbinic colleague of mine who lost his son 20-something years ago, and he said, Doron, there isn't a day that doesn't go by that he doesn't miss his son and feel, yes, as time goes on, there's reprieve, and sometimes, you're knocked out, you're not totally, you're knocked out less, and it's fewer and far between. So I feel incredible brokenness and pain, but at the same time, there's this bracha that I feel that the human heart is able to hold something else. I just wanted to share with you a chidush that has only recently sort of come to me. We're all familiar with either the Baal Shem Tov or the Kotzker. There are a lot of quotes that I'm never sure whenever I look it up. It's the Baal Shem Tov or the Kotzker who said, Ein yoter shalem milev shavur. There's nothing more complete than a broken heart. Now, before October 7th, I would give droshes on this. After October 7th, I don't know what the words mean. When I think of a broken heart, for me, there's nothing more broken than a broken heart. I can't think of anything more broken than a broken heart. Certainly not the word shalem. But I've realized that as from that moment that I was able to say appreciation for Yonatan and to see how much more blessing we have in our life, I feel that I've got a broken heart and a complete heart. And somehow there's an ability to hold both. And then I had this chidush to my mind. Every time we say the Shema, we say V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha, with all of our heart. We know that the word for heart in Hebrew is not levav, it's leiv, so it should be b'chol libcha. Why b'chol levavecha? So we know levav is leiv bet. We've all got two hearts, and we all know what the Mishnah says, and Rashi brings it in the parsha, which he says levavecha b'shnei yitzarecha. Now, I can't think of anything more different and more bifurcated than a Yetzer HaTov and a Yetzer HaRa. There's nothing more different than the desire for good and the desire for bad, lichoira. Yet, we're asked to bring both of these to Hashem. And when I just reflected the other day, I said, that's what I feel Hashem wants from me, is not to invalidate my broken heart and somehow see the silver lining in the broken heart. The broken heart is broken. And I want it to be broken. I don't want to get used to my son. I don't want it to be complete. If my broken heart is complete, then what does it say about my relationship with my son? I feel broken. And I think there's a brokenness which is part of the experience, but I've also realized there's another heart, and that heart is a complete heart. And I've got so much blessing, not only in the rest of our family, but all types of other insights about how this happened with Daniel. So I feel for me, when it says, Ule'ovdecha belevav shalem, bring your whole heart to Hashem, b'chol levavecha. It's bringing a broken and a complete heart. Maybe that's what the Kotzker or the Baal Shem Tov meant. Ein yoter shalem milev shavur. Maybe that's what he meant, that you can bring a broken and a complete heart together. And it just struck me the other day, Rav Efrem and Rav Josh, that when I was saying the Shema, in Birkot Kriyat Shema, I was saying, V'ha'er einenu b'toratecha, v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha, and it's the singular of leiv, v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha. And then it goes to v'yached levaveinu. And then I noticed, why does it go from dveikut of the leiv to yichud of levav? Because it says straight afterwards, v'yached levaveinu la'ahava u'liyirat shemecha. When it comes to bifurcated experiences like yira and ahava, which couldn't be more different. Either you feel awe and distance from somebody, or you feel closeness and intimacy, but somehow I think we're called upon to serve Hashem with a perfect heart. And all I can reflect for people going through it, I can only talk about my own experiences. I somehow feel, for me, there is the ability, if one digs deep, and with Siyata Deshmaya, to feel the pain and to feel broken and to have a leiv shavur, but it doesn't have to define one. I would often look at Miriam Peretz, who I, like you, I'm sure, very close to, and how does she do it? And I would look at Racheli Frankel, and she's always got this eerie smile on her face, Racheli, and I think, how could she do it? And I don't know, but I know that somehow Hashem gives the koach, and I think if one digs deep, and one is able to say, don't invalidate the broken heart, validate it, but it doesn't have to be our only experience. One doesn't have to get lost in it. I gave a talk recently in a community, and somebody came to me and said that there was a psychologist who wrote a book. The psychologist lost a child and was struggling to get over it. And the psychologist wrote that her epiphany moment was, she said, I've lost one child, and if I continue like this, I'm going to lose another three. Right. I'll just never be a mother to them. And that was her epiphany moment. And so the realization that, yes, I have lost, but I also have so much. And I think that stira of Ava and Yira and Yetzer Tov and Yetzer HaRa and Leivav Shalem, Leiv Shavur and Leiv Shalem, for me, it's this ability to somehow, the human heart has got a number of chambers. It can contain experiences. And I think if one digs deep, one realizes that one does have the capacity for both. And yeah, we do.
And that's really what you were describing about the hostages coming back, that you're able to be, you have a full and a happy and a whole heart for those who are coming back alive, while you still have the separate, parallel, broken heart. Obviously for Daniel, it's an amazing perspective for your experience and for those going through it, but really for all of us as well. So thank you. Yeah, Rabbi Broide.
Yeah, you just mentioned Racheli Frankel, and I was just thinking, in addition to you being a father and you have a beautiful family, you're also the executive chairman of Mizrahi World Movement, and I'm just wondering, like Racheli and like so many others, their world was shattered, and in many ways they took their profession, they took their careers in a very different direction. You have an impact on not just a local organization, but on an organization that touches many parts of the Jewish world. Has your outlook changed in terms of how you run the organization? Are there different initiatives that you're working on now?
Yeah, that's also a great question. I think for me, as opposed to some of the others who I want to just say in inverted commas, luckily could very quickly get on with burial and mourning. For me, the first 5.5 months, I did not. All I was trying to do was bring our son back. That's all I was doing. I only did overseas trips if it was related to bringing our son back. I did not do much for Mizrachi. Our deputy CEO, Rabbi Danny Mervis, I asked him to be the acting CEO, and he took over the running. So I literally could not do anything other than maybe 2 things that I did in the first 6 months. Was doing everything to bring Daniel back. That was 1, 2, and 3 of everything I did. And I did feel a responsibility, a need. I felt it was the right thing for me to do, to talk to groups which, reached out to us. Also, Mizrachi was very involved in we brought 120 solidarity groups, including one which is in Israel that I'll hopefully be speaking to soon as well when I get back. And so I did feel, being a person who is, playing a leadership role, and a son we're from Chutz La'aretz, and people wanting to connect, it felt authentic and right to reflect what was going on in a way that one can, process it and give chizuk in that sense. But running Mizrachi, I wasn't doing much other than sort of doing this, which is, I suppose, part of my role as well, to be able to just, bring the experience of Israel closer to people. The first 2 months after Daniel, we heard the news that he passed away, really took the wind out of my sails. The hardest day of my life was the day of the funeral. And it really took the wind out of my sails. I was in action mode for 163 days, and I'm in my most comfortable if I'm doing something. I'm very comfortable in Olama Asiyah. Olama Havaya, where you just have to be, is a lot harder for me. Once I was doing and doing and doing, I always say there's 2 modes. There's doing and being. I'm more comfortable in doing. Being, sometimes I feel I'm more of a human doing than a human being when you just have to be. When I had to just be with the loss of Daniel, it was so painful for me because there was nothing I could do. Yes, I had to bring Daniel back for burial, but it was very different. So that really took the wind out of my sails. And I'll say that I've only gone fully back to, let's call it my job at Mizrachi, a year later, after the first round of Askarot and the Chagim.
Right.
I went back to it. But I'll tell you what I do think I feel a need to do. I did write about this before, and I felt very strongly about it before October 7th in the book that I wrote, The Jewish State from Opposition to Opportunity. The whole second part, I write about Jewish unity. But I feel very deeply that today the greatest calling and greatest exposure of the Jewish people is disunity and divisiveness. And I feel blessed that the pain that I'm feeling is not being directed towards blame. I want it to be directed towards ripui, towards healing, towards unity, towards understanding. I really believe that this is the scourge of the Jewish people. And as Rabbi Jonathan Sachs has said, every empire and nation has tried to destroy the Jewish people, but there's only one people that can destroy the Jewish people, and that's the Jewish people themselves. We know Chazal's analysis of Beit Sheni. And I feel, for me, on October 6th, we really did. We were on a collision course in Israel, and there's still so much lack of trust. It's just, there's so much lack of trust in Israel and in the Jewish world. Some people put their faith in the political system, and that's where their trust is. Others put it in the judicial system, and that's where their trust is. V'lo karav zelzeh. And every time you try and make any type of restoring balance, it's shomu shamayim. And there's an absolute lack of trust of the us and thems in society on so many different levels. And I just feel somehow I've been drawn to speak to all different types of groups, and I do feel that a part of what I want to do personally, and more at Mizrachi we're doing before, but is facilitate a deeper sense of trust building, bridge building, internal cohesion I really think it's the call of the hour. And I think if October 7th wasn't a wake-up call for that in our generation, I don't know what is. So maybe that has colored more my feeling, and I do believe it's the call of the hour.
So how do you navigate, Rav Doron, right? We rabbis, we speak, and we could talk about the things that unify. And if somebody pushes us, what's your position on a ceasefire, on a hostage deal? Should we stop the war? Should we go fight and eliminate Hamas? We can say, look, I don't have an opinion. I don't have skin in that game, and unity and achdus, and let's not let those things divide us. But you do have. So as you say, as the person who wrote the book on achdus, on unity, how have you navigated these issues? Because one of the most divisive issues today, or elements are trying to divide us with, is this question. Even early on, when the slogan became "Bring them home" rather than "Let them go" or "Let them out," the onus, the pressure was being put on Israel, on Bibi, on the government of Israel, and there's some questions about why and what were the motives of the people who framed it that way, rather than put the onus where it belongs. So how have you navigated that? Somebody who's so devoted to Achdus on the one hand, but who is even more devoted to bringing Daniel home, and as a father, how do you navigate those politics of, do you go to marches and demonstrations? Do you demonstrate against the demonstrations? Which side of this political fence do you find yourself on in terms of what should be done next to bring hostages home? Do you take a position publicly as a father, but you're trying to have this role in Mizrachi? How have you had to or tried to navigate that?
Yeah, that's also a great question and very personal and practical. So I'll answer with two levels. In the beginning, how I reconciled for myself. In the beginning, what I was doing was as follows. As a father, my bifurcation was as a father and a member of the Jewish people. In the beginning, I felt as a father, I have to do everything to bring my son back, because that is my responsibility as a father, and I have to think as a father. And as a father, which father would not do anything and everything to bring their son back? When it came to, but I would also say to myself, but Doron, you're not only Daniel's father, you're a son of the Jewish people. And when it comes to being a son of the Jewish people, there's different considerations. I just felt privileged. Well, not privileged. I felt very pained that I was a father, but I felt lucky that I don't have to make that decision. I don't have to make that decision. So I don't have to make the decision of what to do about the hostages. So therefore, as a father, I felt I need to do everything to bring my son home. But I did feel the need to share and say, yes, I am a father, and as a father, you've got to do everything to bring home. But as a member of the Jewish people, it's more complex than just that. The father has to do what the father has to do, and the leaders have to do what they have to do, and that is they have to look at all the considerations. What did I do regarding all of these demonstrations and different forums? I've tried very, very hard, because I believe in it, not to be pigeonholed in one or the other, because I genuinely believe in it. Am I part of Matea Chatufim? Sorry, there's a plane flying about. We'll pass over. Am I part of the hostage forum? Yes, and I've worn this yellow thing from the beginning. And I feel that, has there been an element of political framing? Yes. And has it been used against Bibi and the government? Yes. But I've tried to find the ways to be involved without taking a stand on it. So, for instance, in the beginning, I felt a lot of the Saturday night demonstrations were very political. I didn't want to be part of demonstrations which were non-stop having a go at the government. So a couple of us mentioned it. Even if I am against the government, it's irrelevant. That's not what this should be. As you said, it should be putting pressure on Hamas and not on the government necessarily. So what happened is two things. I only would go and speak at evenings where after a couple of months they started changing the tune a little bit, and it became a little bit more about unity. There were certain Motzei Shabbos that were about unity. In fact, they totally split the demonstrations, and the one in Kaplan went to Kaplan, and the one at Hostage Square was only hostages. Then a second thing happened. I don't know if you know, every Tuesday now for many, many months, the auntie and uncle of one of the fallen officers, a friend of mine, he was a friend of my son. His name is Omer Nautra. He's also a captain and a fallen officer. He's an American citizen. He was a lone soldier. His auntie and uncle initiated something called Sharim Lezichram, Sharim Yachad Lezichram. Singing and davening for their memory. This is every Tuesday at Hostage Square, and this has got a different tone. It's got more of a tone of unity, and this I go and speak at often. And I'm also part of the forum called Forum Tikva, and Forum Gvura. When the people on the one forum heard that I'm part of the other forum, I said, guys, there's a part of me which is with both of them. So where do you stand? I said, I'll tell you where I stand. I stand with both because I genuinely believe that both have got element of truth. So what have I done? I've tried to be involved in ways where I'm not leading a charge. I'm not the one, let's call it politicizing or polarizing. You'll notice that pretty much all the members of government today wear this. They didn't used to in the beginning. All of them wear it. Bibi and Smotrich and so many others, they all wore it. And I had a role to play with some of them, with saying this should not be political. To wear the yellow thing it's a hizdahut. It's saying I'm part of it. I'm part of it, even if I don't fully agree with it. So that's what I've tried to do. And even in the hostage deal, I really do believe whenever I talk about the hostage deal, even though obviously we want our son to come back very, very soon, I genuinely believe that halachically and morally, it's not simple what the right thing to do is. I had an interview a number of weeks ago when the hostage deal happened in Israeli television, and the lady asked me, the interviewer, what's my view on the hostage deal? I think it was on Channel 12. And I said, the hostage deal is a terrible deal, and we're paying prices that we should not be paying. But I don't know if we've got a choice. It doesn't make it a good deal. It's the deal with the Satan. And I don't know. And my head tells me that we shouldn't be making this deal. My heart tells me, can we leave our sons and daughters to die in Gaza? And Rabbi Vadia says you can pay the price, and others say you can't pay the price, and it's Safek and Vadai. And I think Aliba de Emet, the more I go into the Sugya, Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elokim chaim. And I think, what gives me a lot of chizuk, It's true when you have to paskin, and thankfully I don't have to be the posek in this area. So I think as long as you don't have to be the posek, you can show that the reality is complex. What do Chazal say in Masechet Eruvin Daf Yud Gimel? Why do we paskin like Beit Hillel? And the Gemara gives a few answers, and one of the reasons is because Rav Hillel would always validate the opinion of Beit Shammai before his own opinion. So we really paskin like the opinion which is able to validate both. And I think we've forgotten how to do that. Today we live, and you're right, everybody wants to put you in a corner. Are you for or are you against? Are you this or are you that? And I said, you know what, you can be this and that without making it wishy-washy, because I think the only people who can't make it wishy-washy are the people who have to make a decision. You can't make a decision to have a deal and not to have a deal. You have to make a decision. But the rest of us who aren't called upon in this terrible decision of, I often say in life, your decisions are not between good and bad. As leaders, they're between bad and worse. Whatever you're going to do, somebody's going to die. And it's a terrible situation to be in. So luckily, we don't have to make that decisions. But for me, I feel the job of the rest of us, if we don't want to be propagandists and polarizers and playing to the divisive politics, is to say, Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elokim chaim. There's validation in both. And as long as I don't have to make a decision, so I have to make a decision, which protest do I go to? I've made a careful decision not to go to polarizing protests, to go to things where the tone of it, whether it's this forum or that forum, where the tone of it is more conciliatory, more understanding, and less inflammatory, because I think we have too much of that.
We just had Akiva was here, the singer was just here this past Shabbos, and on Shabbos he spoke. They did an interview with Rabbi Moskowitz, and one of the things that he mentioned was talking about the unity and the achdus, was that many times you find this in Jewish history where Hashem will just bring this real strong power of unity. Everyone will feel it, but then it's almost like it's built in that it has to be taken away so that we can then build it ourselves. It's like you got a chance to see it. Remember Racheli and Bakalim and the other mothers would say, we got a chance in the darkness. There was this lightning that went off, which lit up the sky, which we all got to see what it's like, so that we know we can do it. We can do it. We've seen it. It was there. Any suggestions on what can be done? Like, are you thinking actively right now in the world Mizrachi that, we have an opportunity right now like we've never had before? Do you hear anyone talking about that with other organizations in Israel?
Well, let me say like this. Firstly, on a personal level, I'm very involved in this. I just feel like Nasa'i libi in this area, and all types of things are sort of coming my way without me even being proactive about it, because I think things come your way when you sort of put out a certain, where you try to be authentic about where you want to go. And I really want to be involved in bridge building, and not as a platitude, not only more of these dialogues and discussion groups, and I don't for a moment we want to be presumptuous and say, I've got something to add that others don't have. So many have been involved in these discussion groups. So I'm trying to see what's out there and see where I can play a role and see what role we as Mizrachi can play, because you want to play an effective and meaningful role. And as I'm getting more involved, I'm seeing different people and organizations who are very genuine about this. But I do want to say this, Rav Josh, you have to really be genuine about it.
Right.
Often we talk achdut, but we don't. What are we prepared to sacrifice for? Do we really believe in it? And as I want to come to something at Mizrachi, I really do feel, and maybe this will be something I can say for a moment about these elections coming up for the national institutions. I just want to say, I sit not only at World Mizrachi, but World Mizrachi as a religious Zionist organization sits on the World Zionist Organization. I can tell you during judicial reform, I sometimes felt that the Mizrachi representatives were the only mature adults at the table. What I meant by that is everyone was taking things to extremes. I would sit in meetings. I once stood up and I said, guys, do we have to bring every bit of Israeli divisive politics to the table? Must everything become divisive? Can there be no space at a World Zionist organization that we can actually be the ones to bring people together? And at times I felt as Mizrachi, which I do think, Rav Josh, it's built into the ideology. The ideology is religious Zionism. Already in its ideology, it says to strive for Torah, but to aspire towards religious. I mean, look what's happening in Israel today. You've got the draft. You know, I'm a person who always felt very connected to the Haredi world. And I had no ties ever on the Haredi world for not going to the army for two reasons. The state always gave them the ability not to do it. And secondly, the army didn't need them. I must say it caught me totally by surprise in the last months that when the army's crying out for it and there's 10,000 people injured and so many people killed, at this time, so many are digging in their heels. And I do feel that people are drawn to the polls. People are right. I always say that everyone is right. The problem is that when everyone is right, how do we find a way to be right together, of elu va'elu? And yes, people feel threatened, and I'm not trying to judge this one or that one. I'm just saying it's a very deep malocha to say, I really want to be a person who comes away from the polls and tries to build a sense of unity. And it's not an easy thing to do. And things in Israel get polarized very quickly on the left and on the right, and religious and irreligious. So I just want to say, for me, I really do believe more and more that Mizrachi as an organization in general and specifically now has a role to play, that you can aspire to be a Talmid Chacham and a Torah scholar. And there's no stira in actually saying that you can have absolute Mesirut Nefesh for Klal Yisrael in the army. Yes, it comes with certain challenges, and no derech has got all of the truth, but to aspire to this gam v'gam, the same thing I said, holding the different things together. So I think as an organization, I want to say, as the World Zionist Organization, which I want to say is an unbelievable blessing. I call the World Zionist Organization elections, the World Zionist Congress, the best kept secret in the diaspora, because the truth is, until recently, the people who really knew the secret were Israeli politicians who kept it very close to their heart. I always say that what people don't know in the diaspora is that the World Zionist Organization owns one of the largest and most impactful non-profits in the world, and that is called Keren Kayemet Israel. What people don't know is land ownership in Israel and development is not under the Knesset, it's under the World Zionist Congress, it's under the World Zionist Organization. Forgive me, there's a plane flying above again. And because of this was very much controlled by Israeli politicians. As Jews around the world and more organizations are starting to realize that indeed it's actually Jews around the world, 1/3 in the United States, 1/3 in the rest of the world, and 1/3 in Israel, which actually have a say in what happens in these with these positions, and the ability for diaspora Jews to impact what happens in Israel, where we settle the land, what we develop, what budgets go towards education, building institutions of Torah learning and army service, etc. So as I've got more involved, and I myself I must be honest, when I came to World Mizrachi, I wasn't aware of it. It's only in recent years that I really pieced it all together and realized the tremendous opportunity that these elections coming up from March 10th to, it's just before Purim, for 50 days, a person can go online and pay for $5, you can impact, as we say, $5 billion, $1 billion a year. And I just want to encourage people, first and foremost, get involved. You have a voice to whoever you vote for. Get involved because you have a voice to be able to come and say, I'm a Jew living in the diaspora. Yes, I can't vote in the Israeli elections, but I can pay $5, go online and join the World Zionist Organization and be able to cast my vote. And I just want to say what I believe where Mizrachi is in a very unique position. As I'm sure you're aware, in the United States, we have a coalition called the Orthodox Israel Coalition. And what we've tried to do with this coalition is all the organizations who see themselves in some ways as bridge builders, yeshiva, university, It's REITs and it's university. And the OU, it's the Orthodox and it's a union. And the RCA, and of course Mizrachi and Amit and all the National Council and Bnei Akiva. All these, let's call it the broad sweep of the Orthodox Israel supporting community or the religious Zionist Orthodox communities. I feel, and this is obviously me talking as the head of World Mizrachi, is that our voice is more critical now than ever because it's not so easy to see holding different views together, holding different sentiments together, when I think the default position of a lot of us is to be pulled to the polls. And there's a lot of truth in the polls because there's MS over there. But I just think we're at a time, so I'm answering you to say, I feel that that's Mizrachi's position. And I think that's what we need to be doing. And I feel the more people who think this way and find partners who think this way, we can actually say, to use Rav Soloveitchik's words, I think we have to reclaim our Brit Goral. We have to go back to this covenant of fate. I actually now believe, I want to share with you something that I really believe, that even if we make the wrong decisions as a country, if we make them together, they'll be the right decisions. Because we saw with judicial reform, there hardly isn't a leader in Israel which doesn't believe there should be some type of judicial change. You can find quotes from Yair Lapid all the way through. But how it was introduced and the way that it came across was tearing Israeli society apart, even though much of it is appropriate to restore the balance of power. So what do we see? It's actually not always enough to be right. You've got to be smart. It's not enough to have the truth. You've got to be able to find a way that it brings people together. And I really do believe that is, for me, it's the call of the hour. If we actually make decisions together, whatever those decisions are, it will be right because we're in it together. And I think that's absolutely critical.
So in Boca Raton, just like the last election, or I should say even more than the last election, we're going to be pushing very hard that everybody register and vote. It's a tiny price to pay. And like you say, it's what a return on investment for $5, $5 billion. We're going to be pushing, registering, signing people up, getting everyone involved. Mizrachi is an incredible, worthy vote for people. There are others. The key is to keep the money out of the wrong hands, get it into the right hands, and whichever is the right hands for you, people can decide for themselves. Certainly Mizrachi is a worthy option on that end. And I know Mizrachi is cooperating and coordinating with others to sort of keep the money out of the hands of those who want to use it in ways inconsistent, keep it in the hands of those who do. That could be a broad spectrum of those who do, and we're going to be working hard. But I want to, this would be a perfect place to wrap it up, put a neat bow on top. Achdus. I just want to push you, even though this is a topic we avoid enormously, but because I think you're in a unique position to address it. And you said it in passing. As somebody who lost a beloved officer, a soldier, the precious Daniel, Hashem Yikom Damo.
Amen.
Charedim not serving. I know there are families who have a son who's Charedi and a son who's serving. I know there are cousins. One is serving and one is using the exemption. There are neighbors. And people aren't talking because while for a long time these were philosophical, conceptual, theoretical differences, unfair sharing, not sharing of the burden, unfair casualties and losses. So when we talk Achdus is easy, with people who, it's almost easier to have the Achdus with the irreligious Jew than the one who is also religious but practices differently in a way that impacts me. So I just want to push you a little bit about how do you, the chairman of Mizrachi, who lost a son serving in the IDF, how do you still feel Achdus, let's say, with the Haredi community? Where are the avenues and what are the opportunities to say this is an important difference, there's a disagreement, it's an important disagreement, we can maintain it, we can have our positions, but let's not be so emotionally invested in where we disagree that it splinters our people. Are you able to advocate for that? Do you have those relationships? How do you, as a spokesperson who's experienced it, address that?
Also a great, excellent question. I think as follows. I think for me, I'm trying to use the same mindset. I really do believe that nothing's going to come out of blame and criticism. Nothing comes out of anger, blame, and criticism. And I think we all know already that the only community that can change is a community which changes from within. You've got to do unto others that you want to be done to you. The sanilach. Nobody wants to be forced into anything. It's not going to happen through forcing any community on this side or that side into anything. Anything happening forced is litchoket akates. And when you push something that is not ready, it doesn't work. So firstly, number one is it's not through anger and it's not through criticism. Do I feel on a personal ideological level deep pain and disappointment at the response of the Haredi world. I don't want to say the Haredi world because there are many who are serving and it's under the radar, but of many in the Haredi world. I do feel pain and I do feel disappointment. I didn't expect it. I really didn't expect it. I didn't expect after October 7th and after the amount of injured, and I didn't think this would be the response, and therefore there certainly is more of a taina, one that there wasn't before. But at the same time, we can have tainas on our brothers, and we can have disagreements with our brothers, and we can have deep disagreements with our brothers. But I think that's what we've lost the ability to do, is that even if we feel emotive and we feel pain, if we are brothers, then we're brothers. So it's true, you can say, ha'achechem yetzu lamilchama v'atem lo. You can say that taina, but at the end of the day, anashim achim anachnu. Anashim achim anachnu. And therefore we have to deal with this as brothers. Does that mean one can't express pain and disappointment and have sharp arguments? Absolutely. But I don't think you can make one into the good and the bad, and one into sensitive and one into insensitive. I think the moment we attribute motives to unacceptable, I really believe Sinat Chinam is attributing other people's motives to impure motives, and that people are doing things not for L'Shem Shammai. And I think we have to see everyone is trying to move Jewish history forward in the way that they believe. And that doesn't mean we can't hold very strong tainas and harsh arguments and be able to argue it. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to happen. That's not where the change is going to come from. Maybe the macha'ah does maybe make the other side. Sometimes if there's a macha'ah, the value in macha'ah is people maybe understand the extent of, people are very upset on the other side. And I think in any relationship, you're not going to change or manipulate your partner. Nobody in marriage and of the covenant of marriage changes the other through force or manipulation and all of these things. But one thing we do in all close relationships is we bring to the person, we say in Hebrew, we bring out our pain and our feelings and our disappointment. And you hope the other side won't trample on it. But I don't believe you can move forward without being able to bring out what you're feeling and try to work with all sides towards a solution. I believe it will happen. Obviously, the Haredi world is feeling very, very threatened, and that's why it's digging its heels in. And those threats need to be heard. And I do believe that there needs to be a way to work with each other forward. As you say, you can be emotive without the blame and without the attributing things to impure motives, and try to find a way that at the end of the day, we all know we want the Jewish state to succeed. We want there to be a burden being shared by more wherever it can be. But I think we have to work towards it in a respectful way, without the anger, the criticism, the blaming, because I think change doesn't happen that way.
Rav Doron, you are refreshing you're a breath of fresh air. You are a source of light and hope and positivity and perspective, a perspective that, for whatever reason, Hashem put you in a not unique, unfortunately, but really unusual position to have and to share. You've been doing it for 1.5 years, and please God, we'll continue sharing in the most positive sense. And we look forward to that day Daniel is brought back, and that full closure, and that day of mourning that you deserve to have, to be able to honor him, but continue to move forward. And we join you in it. Thank you. Thank you for all you do for the Jewish people, for Am Yisrael. And thank you for sharing time with us today.
Thank you, Rav Efrem. Thank you, Rav Josh. Deeply appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Bye-bye.